Welcome to GamesWorld. Tonight is review night, so please enter the House of Games.
Welcome to the House of Games for the very first of GamesWorld's review programs. Each week we'll be taking a look at the most exciting new game releases. Tonight's selection includes Lemmings II for the Amiga, Elfish for the PC, and Nintendo's latest, Star Fox.
And I'll be demonstrating the very latest in hardware, as well as bringing you mouth-watering features about all aspects of modern technology. Tonight, I'll be looking at a unique venture to produce games by combining graphics with live action, and I'll also be showing you how you can use the special effects process used on Terminator 2, Morphing, in the privacy of your very own bedrooms.
So, let's crack straight on and take a look at tonight's first game, Wings. And it's Striker by Elite for the Super Nintendo. A soccer simulation, Striker looks set to challenge Super Soccer for football supremacy on the SNES. 64 world teams are available, each individual player having their own strengths and weaknesses. There's a new twin-player option where two players control the same team, plus action replays and options galore. As you've probably gathered by now, it's a game I'm rather keen on, one football game that truly kicks. But what do our guests think of it?
Striker is the first game that, for me, really challenges Kickoff 2 for that real top position in football games. This is a game that it gives you a vast amount of things you can actually do. It really is almost like playing the real thing. You can use all sorts of trick shots with the ball. The game is incredibly competitive. The computer is very, very good. And against an opponent, it gets even better. For me, this game scores 9 out of 10, and if you think that's a bit unfair, that's only because I'm not really a soccer fan.
The only thing I didn't like about the game was the really dire music on the title screen. It's like some sort of sad, shambling mockery of a sort of a match of the day theme tune. God knows what it's doing in there, because that really sort of ruins the sort of the opening sequence. Other than that, though, this is a really brilliant sports simulation, and football fans are going to go absolutely mad about it. This deserves a 9 out of 10. It's a great game.
This game was made for the Super NES's enhanced rotating and scrolling. It works perfectly. Your little footballers are incredible. They're completely unrealistic. They scud it around the field like they're on amyl nitrate or something. And when they actually shoot, it's completely unrealistic. The ball bends like nothing else. I mean, it's got like more outrageous curves than Don French. The sound is great. There's a lovely, satisfying little as you kick the ball. It's without a doubt the best football game on the Super Nintendo, and until they make a conversion of sensible soccer, it will remain the same. If any game deserved 10 out of 10, this is probably it, but none of them do, so I'll give it a 9.
3 9s, so it's a hearty thumbs up all round for Striker. If you're a fan of soccer games, it's one I strongly recommend you go out and buy. There'll be loads more games in a moment, but now it's time to find out what treat Jane has in store in her boudoir.
Combining live action with graphics has been a popular trick of the movie business for some years, from the early Mary Poppins to the more recent Roger Rabbit. Now the technique's being adopted by a games designer. Around 80 original spitting image style characters are to be featured in a radically new concept in games for Atari and eventually for the Mega CD. Called Space Junk, it involves filming live action puppets, then combining them with a graphics background to produce an action adventure game. We've been to the location to find out more.
Space Junk is basically an interactive adventure game with elements of sort of murder, mystery, action, all sorts of various elements thrown into one. And you, as a player, when you're playing Space Junk, you take the role of Randolph, sort of the Rastafarian dog. Each of the sprites that you see on screen has a latex equivalent. When you go up and talk to these characters, the screen will change to one where you see the latex figure, and you can interact with that character.
Hello, I'm Colin, and I'm stuck inside the persona of Jefferson Lewis III, Jr.
we have to make sure that the movement of the person within the mask is echoed by the actual latex itself, so that you get all the gestures that depict what the character is thinking.
What kind of character are you?
I haven't got a clue what kind of character. He's a pilot of the ship that crashed into the swamp that this guy's taken over. Now this guy has captured this pilot and hung him upside down, so when you actually see it on the demo, he'll be upside down because he's hanging by his feet.
These images were created using broadcast quality film studio, and then the images passed up through a Quantal printbox system, and the frames selected, sequenced, and then recolored by our artists here. Space Junk will only be put on the Sega system on CD for the simple reason that it is absolutely impossible to make a game of this size and this complexity run as a cartridge-based game. We intend Space Junk to be put on a variety of different systems with different capabilities. I think the results are pretty spectacular.
Atari are launching Space Junk around May this year as the flagship game for their Falcon system, and in an attempt to rocket themselves back into the game arena maybe. I think it could be just the boost Atari need.
There'll be more delights from Jane later. Wings, the next game. Lemmings II. Those suicidal rodents are back in the Psygnosis game for the Amiga. 120 levels take you into 12 different worlds, ranging from Circus World through Medieval and Egyptian worlds to Beach Bum and Space World. Choose the world from the map and get going. You can give your lemmings up to 60 different attributes, making them anything from ghetto blaster carrying lemmings to skiing lemmings. But remember, choose the wrong attribute and you can kiss those lemmings goodbye. Personally, I think Lemmings 2 is fab. I love the original and I love this too. But what do our guests make of it?
Lemmings fans have certainly been creaming their slacks in anticipation of this game. The problem is I think they're going to be disappointed. It's Lemmings, basically. You've got some new features, you've got new little lemmings, and the screen layouts are certainly different. But for me, there's just not enough there. I think Lemmings deserves a 6, maybe a 7, probably 6.5.
Now, I'm a huge Lemmings fan. I've played on just about every single machine, so I'm bound to be playing this one until the next Lemmings 3 comes out. It's a very good game, but if you're looking for something startlingly different, you're going to have to look elsewhere. It's too much more of the same for my liking, and that's why it gets an 8.
Some people are a little bit disappointed with this, but I think it's very nearly a perfect sequel. Yes, graphically it's the same, the sounds are the same, the Lemmings are still there, but then Lemmings was the most original idea in game history, so why change it? What they have done is basically given you more of the same with lots of lovely little tweaks in it. Now they can jump, you've got little skiers in the sort of snow tribe. This is another brilliant thing about it, they're split into different tribes. So you've got the sort of snow ones and they can ski and like fly off of little sort of ramps and things like that. I would give this a 9 out of 10 because there's been so many sequels out recently which have been horrendous. This one's very good.
A 6, an 8 and a 9. Obviously a great game. The only possible drawback being that if you've got the first Lemmings, you may be disappointed that the sequel is not sufficiently different. Well, now it's back to Jane for a game review of a slightly different kind.
Well, it's all very well getting journalists and experts' thoughts about the latest games, but what do the people who actually go out and buy them think? Each week, we're going to take a game and lay it bare before the harshest critics of all, Joe Public. This week's game is Super Star Wars.
Super Star Wars is a very good game. It's a platform shoot 'em up. It's very good, except on the sandcrawler level, it can get a bit tedious and boring. Way! Oh, yeah! There's all these platforms, and if you fall off them, then you have to start almost the whole level all over. So you're going to be in deep trouble. So hee to that. Ooh. Just to get a stupid heart, all that nasty way. Did I get any help from it? No. The first section is probably one of the best sections because it's got just about the right mixture of easiness and difficulty. It's not too hard so you want to throw the game away, but it's good enough so that you'll want to keep on trying when you get it wrong. It's got good music. Oh! there's an airplane section which is very good. You've got to kill lots of Jawas, and when you kill them, they laugh. It's very slick, and the graphics are good, and it's got very good sound quality. Sometimes you get a bit confused on the buttons, and it's not a very good game for people who are beginning playing computer games. But it's a very good game if you're an experienced player and you don't want something you'll just finish in 5 minutes.
If there's something you'd like to say about this programme or about video games in general, we'd love to have you send in home video footage of yourself expressing your views. Alternatively, if you've achieved an exceptionally high score or any other game-playing feat, we'd also be very keen to hear about it. If you're interested, we'll give you the address where to send your tapes at the end of the programme, and of course all tapes will be returned.
And that's where the games get a really hard time. Wings, the next game, please.
Are you ready?
And it's Global Gladiators for the Mega Drive. Save the world from pollution with a little help from Ronald McDonald in this platform action from Virgin. Pick up your grunge gun and fight off those stay monsters and rubbish ogres in the role of the McDonald kids, Mick and Mac, in this platform race for the world's salvation. Play through Ice World and other landscapes as you pick up energy boosters to help you through increasing levels of pollution, onwards towards the final showdown. An environmentally friendly game from McDonald's? I don't think so. It seems you can buy credibility, but one thing you can't buy is scores from our reviewers. Let's see what they made of it.
What we've got here is a very slick platform game. It's very traditional, run, jump, shoot, but it's very slick. The graphics are excellent. You've got really nicely detailed sprites and some absolutely fantastic sound, really sort of smart samples in there. But for me, there's two big problems. The first of all, this has got nothing to do with McDonald's at all. I mean, you're running around shooting great lumps of snot. I mean, it could be a Vic Sinex game, really. I mean, considering the amount of sort of green globbits that get fired around everywhere. Secondly, there is no challenge there whatsoever. I know I'm a good player, but it took me half an hour to get through it, when even novice players are going to go through it in a couple of hours. And really, for a game that costs about £40, that's just not good enough. I think Global Gladiators deserves a very average 5 out of 10.
For me, Mick and Mac is initially enormous fun. It's something you want to explore, you want to see what's coming next. The only drawback with the game is when you do start to explore and see what's coming next, it's fairly similar to what's gone before. It's not one of those games which you actually sit down and think, I will finish this, because after you get about halfway through you think, well, what's the point, because I've seen it all before anyway. For that reason, it's not a classic. For me, Mick and Mac scores an 8, going on a possible 7.5.
I think it's criminal. It's not a game, it's a walking advert. There are so many McDonald's signs all over the place. It's just the complete product placement. I think it's outrageous that this could be released as a game, and please, if you have one protest march this year, make it about this game. I'm going to give it a big fat ozone-friendly 0. I know it's terribly wishy-washy liberal of me, but this game is sick.
A 5, an 8, and a predictable 0 from Dominic. A very, very mixed bag for Global Gladiators. After the break, we'll be taking a look at Nintendo's latest blockbuster, Star Fox, and Jane will be showing you how you can morph in the privacy of your own bedroom. In the meantime, see if you can figure this one out. What happens next in this Level 2 clip from Super Mario World? Answer after the break. Welcome back to the House of Games. We asked what happens next in this clip from Super Mario World. Hitting the switch unleashes a mighty end-of-level guardian onto that Brooklyn plumber. Now it's time for the next game. Wings, bring it on. For the PC, it's the weird and wonderful Elfish from Mindscape, the designers of Tetris. What you're playing with here is the whole evolution of subaquatic life itself. Catch some fish from the world's oceans and bring them to life in your own tank, then meddle with nature itself. Change the watercolor, change the algae, and even indulge in a spot of genetic engineering to create your very own species. I think I'll stick to James Pond. But are our guests of the same opinion?
I don't quite know why we're actually reviewing Elfish, because I don't think it even deserves to be on the programme. As a concept, it might sound like a great idea to begin with, but are you actually going to pay for this? Are you going to pay for setting up an artificial fish tank in your front room on your telly when you might as well go out and buy the real thing for just a little bit more? The score for this game, in my view, is 1.
It really is boring. I mean, personally, I would prefer to go out and buy a wet haddock and get a mate of mine to slap me around the face with it, really. Well, this sad case gets 1 out of 10 for sheer cheek.
I want real games for real men, and this just doesn't actually fit into the category. The only thing that's quite good is that I like the sense of humour. I like the fact that one guy actually sat down for months and months and months and researched this. I find that absolutely hysterical. But apart from that cunning quip from him, I think it's a complete waste of time. I would give this 1 out of 10 for the slight chance that they are taking the mickey with this game and that they're actually rock-hard real men underneath.
So it's 3 1s for Elfish. A dreadful set of marks, which I'm sorry to say relegates it to the place where video games burn in eternal damnation. Yes, game hell. But now it's back to Jane's boudoir for some strange mutations.
If you haven't got the faintest idea what morphing means, then think about films like Terminator 2 and Total Recall. How on earth did Arnie's arch-enemy, the T-1000 cop, dissolve into his metal alter ego? By morphing, of course. It's a computerized special effect used extensively in the movie business, particularly for sci-fi films. It's the gradual transformation of one image into another by warping key features of the first image into the next. Christian Hogue is the morphing expert behind the effects in Terminator 2, and he told us exactly how it works. Books?
Well, metamorphosis started off originally as sort of mixed dissolves between differently made up people or different objects, and it started to really come of age when I worked on Terminator 2. There's quite a lot of morphing done in Terminator 2, but most of it was not noticeable. It was very subtle, just to go from live action to the sort of the Chrome Man stage. The next stage from there, the next sort of style of morph is really a three-dimensional morph, where you are working with live action, but you're adding a computer-generated three-dimensional mannequin or something like that into the shot. And a good example of that's where the Terminator moves through the metal bars in a way that you could never do as a real actor, or at least not have him survive the experience anyway. There's still a lot of areas to explore in morphing. I mean, we've done a commercial for Mitsubishi where there's 3 different kinds of morphs in it. There's a part where a man turns into a peacock. There's one morph which isn't really a morph, it's half a morph. His face and his eyes are distorted so these crystals can come out of his eye sockets and out of his mouth. And there's a fairly obvious morph where a man ages, which is a fairly classic sort of morph. What we have to do is we have to have 2 bits of live action material, 2 clips of film, one with the young man turning to camera, and a second piece of film with an old man turning to camera as well. We do a mix, basically, between those 2 clips so that we can see how the timing's going to affect the morph. We then take those clips onto the computer system. The software will automatically distort the young man into the same sort of shape as the old man, and vice versa. And that basically gives you the morph effect. Morphing's no longer a sort of a very one-off special effect. Anybody can afford to do it. It's probably going to be overused for a while, but I think the future uses of it are sort of really only limited by people's imagination.
And you can see Terminator 2 on Sky Movies Plus on March the 8th. Any Amiga user will know that attempts in the past to produce morphing effects for this machine haven't been very sophisticated, to say the least. But this could be the best yet. It's called Cinemorph, and it works in unison with art programs such as Deluxe Paint 4, and it puts morphing in almost anybody's grasp. The menu's really easy to use, but it does take a bit of practice to get a bit creative. And looking through these 2 examples will show you what Cinemorph's capable of. Animated sequences that can be shocking, poor old Dracula, or simply entertaining and fun. Cinemorph's one of the simplest systems for Amiga owners, and for around £99, it's something serious artists and graphic designers might see as a chance to let their fingers do the morphing.
Time for the last game of the evening, Wings. And it's Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. You take the part of a courageous fox. You and your fellow animal braves, dogs, cats, and many others, shoot hell for leather at anything that invades your airspace. Career your craft through the cosmos as you check the different viewpoints while blasting enemy craft over 3 action-packed missions. It looks fab. I don't think there's that much of a game there. But are our guests of a like mind?
Star Fox is a real showpiece game. The graphics are incredible, 3D like I've never seen on a console game before. I've seen stuff like this in the arcades, but wouldn't have dreamed that a Super Nintendo could actually do this. The gameplay matches that. It's just great, really addictive, very, very tough indeed. Working your way through the levels is very, very hard. You've got enormous alien ships. It's almost like playing a game of Star Wars, the film. Truly wonderful stuff. 9 out of 10 for this game. It's absolutely fantastic and is a must-buy for Super Nintendo owners.
Star Fox is the next generation of computer games on the Super Nintendo. It's the first cartridge to use the SFX chip, which is an incredibly fast processor. And what this means is you get really fast 3D as you play. And by golly, this game really does need it. This game is so difficult that after a week's play, you'll probably be lucky to get off level 3. And there are lots more to come after that. We're talking about a cartridge which actually brings virtual reality in the home just one step closer. And for me, this is the best cartridge I've seen this year. For me, this game scores 9, possibly going on 10 out of 10. It's the first game, as I've said, to use the SFX chip, and I think that chip ought to be renamed the SEX chip. It really is that hot.
This is a sumptuous affair, this. It really is absolutely splendid. Graphically, it's probably the best thing that I've seen. Technically, it's superb, especially little things like the way that your craft does a little spin roll when you flick the top buttons on the joypad. Absolutely superb. The one horrible, heinous thing about this game is it's not enough to have a game, you've got to have a fluffy toy as well. And Mr. Nintendo has horrendously, evilly tacked this Fox character on so he can cash in and rip people off by buying the little toys. So please, if he does bring out little foxy toys, little cute little things like that, please don't buy it because it's just a con. I was going to give it 9 out of 10, 1 off for the toy, but I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 because I think I'll take 2 off for that.
It's an 8, a 9, and a maximum 10. Superb marks for Star Fox, which means it gets to go to the place where all truly great games rest in peace. Game Heaven. Well, that's it for this week. Next week we'll be looking at Lethal Weapon for the Super Nintendo and Super Kickoff for the Mega Drive.
And I'll be trying to find out why the craze for manga comics that swept Japan is now taking off here in videos and games.
Joining us in the House of Games will be Mark Wingett, DC Carver from The Bill. Look forward to seeing you in 7 days.
Good night.
Good night.
And I'll remind you, tomorrow night at the same time, you, the audience, get your chance to try your hand at GamesWorld, because Wednesday night is live night. Back to